I want to go over some navigation functions and commands in this video. Now, this is an important video in that it covers a lot of basic tasks that you're going to be doing routinely. So I'd suggest maybe getting a pencil and paper, writing some of these down, studying them. These are important commands that are useful to have at your fingertips. Now, I'm going to start by bringing a file into the timeline. Let me hit F3 to close up the console, and I'm going to jump to the loops browser here, and I've navigated to a loop that I like, and you can open and close these folders and disclose the subfolders by going inside and so on. And I'm going to click on this one, and I can audition it here. And I'm going to hit stop. It's going to conform to the tempo because of the stretch files function that I have in this smart template. And I'm just going to take this and drag it to an empty space in the timeline. Just drop it, let's say right there at bar 5. So first thing I want to show you is that we can single click in the timeline here, and that'll position the playback cursor. So I'm clicking there and so on. And it's rounding off to the nearest beats due to the snap setting. But we'll look at that in another video. So I'm going to click here to the beginning of bar 5, and I can hit the space bar to toggle playback. And we're hearing the click. I think I'm going to turn that off, this metronome icon here. And I'll hit spacebar again. So spacebar will toggle playback, stopping and starting from wherever this playback cursor is. Now, another thing I can do is simply double click in the timeline here, and it'll position the cursor and start playback from there. Spacebar to stop, double click, starts playback from wherever I click. I'll double click here, hit spacebar, and it stops. Now, I'm just going to zoom a little bit by positioning my cursor in the timeline and dragging up and down, and that'll zoom in and out. There's other zoom commands we'll look at, but I just want to use this one for the moment. Now, we have dedicated start and stop commands. I can use the enter key to start playback on the numeric keypad, and right now the cursor is in the middle here, so it's going to start from there. Hit 0, and that'll stop playback. Enter, and 0. So those are dedicated stop and start commands. I'm going to hit F4 to open the inspector and just bring this fader down a bit. We don't really need to hear the music as loud. This is more about navigation. Now, it's useful to be able to move this playback cursor by a bar, forward or backward. And to go forward by a bar, we use Shift with the plus key on the numeric keypad. So as I hit that, you'll see it's going forward and rounding to the bar. And we can use Shift with minus on the numeric keypad to go backwards by a bar. So even if I position in the middle and go back with Shift minus, it'll position to the beginning or ends of the next or previous bars. So here I am at the beginning of this, and I can hit spacebar. Spacebar again will stop. Now we can forward fast or fast rewind using those same functions without the Shift key. So if I'm on the numeric keypad, I can just use the plus button, and I can keep my finger on it, and it'll keep fast forwarding, or the minus button. As long as I keep my finger down, it'll go fast forward or fast rewind and just stop wherever I release my finger. So again, with Shift, we can then do it in even bar increments, which if you're working with music is usually pretty useful. Now let's say I want to loop a selection. First of all, I can click on this event to select it. Let me click away, and it's unselected. You'll see the difference in the shading. And with it clicked, I can loop the selection. And to loop the selection, I hit Shift P, and you'll see this little loop icon that's become enabled that corresponds to the length of this selection. Now, a selection can also be a portion of the waveform. I'm just going to click here and drag to zoom in again a little bit so we can get more nuanced. And with this crosshair tool, let's say I select that. I can go Shift P, and it's now going to set the loop range to correspond to the selection, which is different than the entire event. Again, I'll select this little part and go Shift P, and now it's going to loop that. Now, we can also loop a selection like that, but snapped or rounded to the bar. And to do that, we just hit P. So with this same selection, if I hit P, it's going to round this to the whole bar, even though the selection is just that little bit of the bar. I'll select this little bit here and hit P, and it's going to round it to that whole bar. And this is a 2-bar loop. Now, we can toggle the loop on or off. You'll see it's kind of shaded light gray. We can toggle it on or off with this button here, and you'll see it becomes active. Or we can use the / on the numeric keypad, which is much quicker. So now when I hit playback, it's going to loop that one area. Now, if I hit playback, it's going to start from here. I've got to position it to the beginning of the loop, so I can single click there, or I can use my rewind key command. But another thing that we can do is go to the start of the loop. And to do that, we use 1 on the numeric keypad, and that jumps there. And I can go to the end of the loop by hitting 2. And we'll start there. So let me hit 1 and now hit spacebar to play. And it's looping that 1 bar over and over again. So we looked at positioning the timeline based on bars and based on selections and based on loop ranges. But we can also go to a time position independent of any of them. I'm going to hit Command T, and that's Control T on Windows, and it brings up this box. And let's say I'm going to type in 7 at the beginning and just hit return for OK. It's going to position it bar 7. Command T, let's say I'm going to type in 8 and then hit Tab to go to the next field and type in 3, and then I'll hit return or enter again to dismiss the box. And it jumps to bar 8, beat 3. And you can get nuanced if down to the subdivision finer than that. So I'm going to go Command T again to bring it up, and I'll type in 9, tab, 2, tab, let's say 2 again. Hit enter, and now it's going to bar 9, beat 2, the second subdivision, second 16th note between the second beat and third beat. So we can position the cursor with very fine control like that. Now we can always go back to the beginning of the song, hitting the period button on the numeric keypad, and there I've just positioned it right back to bar 1. And we can always locate to the beginning of a selection using L. So you'll see here, and I'm using my scroll wheel, my mouse scroll wheel horizontally to scroll like that, by the way. So we have this little selection, and if I want to position to the beginning of the selection, I can just hit L, and there it's located to the beginning. Now, let's say I have multiple events. I'm just going to click in the background to deselect. I'm going to Option click and drag this to create duplicates of it. So I've got, let's say, 3 versions of this now. And again, I'm going to zoom the timeline so we can see them all in one screen like that. I can go to the next and previous event. So right now I'm here, and if I want to go to the next event, I can go Shift, Alt, or Option N for next. And it's jumping to the next ones. And I can go back using Shift, Option, and B for back. So we can go to next and previous events like that. So those are some basic navigation functions. I want to do a review, and I suggest you take some time and really practice them and get them under your fingertips. All right, the most basic functions: single click in the timeline to position the playback cursor. Double click in the timeline will position the cursor and start playback at the same time. Use the space bar to stop and start playback, or use the Enter key for a dedicated start command, or the 0 key on the numeric keypad for a dedicated stop command. And then basic moving of the playback cursor along the timeline. Rewind 1 bar at a time using Shift with the minus key on the numeric keypad. Move the playback cursor forward 1 bar at a time using Shift with the plus key on the numeric keypad. And keep your finger down on the minus key with no modifier for a fast rewind, or on the plus key on the numeric keypad for a fast forward. Now next are loop-based commands. We can loop a selection using Shift-P, and that can be either clicking on an event to select the whole event, or clicking a portion of the event by clicking and dragging within it. And then we can round that off to the bar by simply using P without the modifier. We can turn the actual looping function on and off with the / key on the numeric keypad. And we can position the playback cursor to the beginning of a loop by using 1 on the numeric keypad, or the end of the loop by using 2 on the numeric keypad. More positioning commands. We can hit Command T or Control T to bring up the Go To Time box, where we can type in a specific location to position the playback cursor. We can go to the beginning of the song by using period on the numeric keypad. We can locate to the beginning of a selection using L, or we can go to the next event using Shift-Alt-N, or previous event in the timeline using Shift-Alt-B. We'll continue with more in the next video.